Hey, let's add a new request in the API that will allow the requester to get the data in the transaction pool map. We're going to add a new request under the API resource with the endpoint transaction pool map. So it's going to be a get request after our existing API/transact method. And I know that the name is rather long, but in this case, I feel that it is good to be specific that we are getting the transaction pool map. So here we have our callback function, and then we have our rec and res parameter. Now in this case, transaction pool as a name could potentially work, so something like this. But the problem with this is that this is a little more generic than is probably comfortable. In other words, this is a little confusing because the transaction pool is an entire class. Inside, there is a transaction map which contains the data. So having transaction pool map as the endpoint is more clear. Cool. And the result is that we'll respond with res.json and then render the transaction pool.transaction map within the JSON itself. All right. As we do so, we can also get rid of this transaction pool log in the transact method. All right, go ahead and save that. And then once you have that change, let's go ahead and check it out in the application. In the command line, make sure you have an instance of the application going with an npm run dev. And once it's fully started, open up the Postman application. Once you have Postman up, open up a new tab, go to http://localhost 3000 as usual, and then we're going to hit the API/transaction pool map endpoint. Cool. Now as we send this, nice, we get a response and the transaction pool, it seems, is currently empty, which is why we're getting an empty response. But what if we actually make a transaction? So hopefully you have an existing tab for the post request to API/transact. If not, go ahead and configure one. So you're going to want a post request at localhost 3000 API/transact. Go to the body field, select raw, and then JSON application JSON. Make sure to have a valid JSON body with a recipient and amount, all surrounded by double quotes. And you're also going to want to make sure the headers field is present with content type is application JSON. Once you have all of that, click the send request and go ahead and do this a couple times. All right, so we have the transaction. And then back in the transaction pool map request, as we make this one, yep, our transaction pool map is definitely consisting of more data. Cool. So we get the new transaction keyed under its own transaction ID. Very nice. Overall, this is going to make figuring out the state of the transaction pool a lot more straightforward. Next, we should make sure that new transactions are known amongst all interested parties in the application. Just like we broadcast when a new block is mined with the blockchain channel through our pub subclass, we should also broadcast new transactions as they're successfully generated. All right, let's do this next.